Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. We're going to be looking at whether the coronavirus crisis will finally digitize payments in Latin America. My name is David Delgado. I am the Digital Marketing Director for America's Market Intelligence, and I'm going to be serving as the moderator for today's webinar. So before we get started, I just want to give you a basic idea of the structure. It's going to be your typical presentation with a couple of speakers and a panel discussion. And of course, you may have questions that come up during the course of the webinar, so we want to explain how that works as well. You can ask us a question at any time during the webinar itself. The way to do it is if you look at your screen, you're going to see a panel, and there's an icon there that says Q&A, sort of at the bottom there, a rectangular panel, and you just bring that up, and that'll give you a window. You type in your question and send it to us, and we'll address as many questions as we possibly can during the course of the webinar. One of the big questions that we always get in these webinars, as a matter of fact, is, will the materials be available after? And so I want to answer that one now before you can even ask it, which would be yes, yes, yes. Within about 24 to 72 hours, we send out the video as well as the presentation slides to everyone who is registered. So definitely those materials will be available. So that's the basic issue there. If you have any other questions, by all means, as I explained, just use that window. You can send them on out to us. We're also going to be asking you a couple of questions, by the way, poll questions. We'll announce those when they come up. It'll be pretty simple. It'll just come up on your screen and you pick the option that you think is best, or multiple options if that's the case. And that's also very straightforward. All right, let's move on here to get further into the actual material of the webinar. A little bit of information about us, though, first. We're America's Market Intelligence, of course. Our focus is market intelligence. So one of the things that we do is combine data and analysis to help companies make better business decisions in Latin America. So that's a main area of focus for us. And of course, within that, we operate in specific sectors, and one of them is payments. So over the course of the years, we've done hundreds of studies in payments, and that's an area of expertise for us. And as part of that, we like to share some of our knowledge with webinars such as this one. Now this brings us to our legal notice. I'm not going to get into this and read it line by line just for the interest of time. I recommend that you read it at your leisure when you do have a little bit of time. The key takeaway here is that the speakers who are speaking today, even those from America's Market Intelligence, they're speaking with their own particular views, not necessarily those of the companies that they work for. So that's a main takeaway. And also, please take a look at the information about the data that's going to be presented here today, the disclaimer involving that as well. All right, so let's move on and jump on to the next section in which we introduce our speakers for today's webinar.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Abel. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm very excited about this webinar. My name is Lindsay Lear. I lead the payments practice here at AMI, and I'm very happy to have you with us. I'd like to have our very special guest, Mónica, introduce herself as well.
Hi all, thank you so much for the invitation to this webinar. I'm Mónica Mariño. I'm the Global Head of Payments in Rappi. In case you don't know Rappi, we are a merchant that it's currently operating in 9 countries in Latin America, where basically you can find anything that you want to purchase in our app. So thanks for the invitation.
So hello everyone, my name is Marina. I joined AMI last year. I am payments affiliate based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm really glad to have you all here. Thank you for your attendance.
Terrific, thank you, Mónica and Marina. So let's get started with today's content. Before we do that, I want to very briefly let you all know of how AMI has responded to COVID-19. This whole webinar is about how we can swiftly respond to the changes in our industry, and that also applies to consulting firms. You may have seen us putting out a lot of content, doing a webinar each week on different industries. We have a suite of new services available for you to help you adjust and get through this very unique moment we're living. They range from complimentary offerings such as this webinar into very engaged projects and customized efforts such as AMI moderated strategic planning sessions, tailored monitoring. If you like this webinar and you're interested in doing your own webinar to your own audience with the same level of thought leadership and independent thinking, that is something we also offer. You have the QR code there to scan and learn more about all of our services. So take a moment to ponder that. We're happy to answer questions at the end and after the webinar. So thank you for your attention on that. Let's dive right into what we're going to be talking about today. We make it our business to understand what is happening in any moment of the industry. That's what we do as consultants. And this moment is particularly special. All of our clients and our general wider audience want to know two key things. What has happened so far under COVID-19 and what will happen in the future? What changes can we expect and how should we adjust? We very often are asked to predict the future. Now, we cannot do that so concretely. Nobody can. But based on our research and our very sharp analysis, we can provide our best guess and what we think will happen. And more than that, ask the right questions to get you to consider the changing circumstances that we're in. And we're talking about digitization today because what we have observed so far is that we are in a very unique moment and we have an unprecedented opportunity in the payments industry to impact a change that will last longer than these 2 months that we're in quarantine. People are forced to stay home, brick and mortar establishments are closed, cash payments are drastically being reduced, and e-commerce is in many ways the only channel available to consume goods and services. And so in many ways, this is the perfect storm to promote digitization in Latin America. We've seen the term forced digitization, and this is not meant to be taken negatively. Forced can mean because of these unique circumstances, because these circumstances are delivering convenience and value and incentive that is enough to change consumer behavior, or it may actually be forced thanks to government programs and assistance being delivered electronically. So we want to pay very close attention to how we can leverage and play in this moment. And in this webinar, we'll be talking about 4 specific areas where digitization is possible and where we have a very unique potential. So facilitating e-commerce for consumers, facilitating it for merchants. We'll take some time speaking about digitization through government subsidies and government assistance, and what banks, financial institutions, and fintechs need to be most paying attention to right now, which is digital onboarding and digitizing your clients from the first moment they interact with you. So that sets the stage for how we're going to shape our conversation and what you can expect. So if we go on to the next slide, we're going to start off right away with our first poll. So this is a multiple choice poll. So please select all that apply. We would like to know, what has your company done already in response to COVID-19? Today, we're talking all about what are the changes that we need to make to react and respond, to adjust to this new environment that we're operating in. So we want to know what you guys have done. We want to know what is our audience, what are the players in Latin America, how are they responding? I can see many votes coming in. Take a moment to observe all of those options and see which ones you think your company has already done. I'm very curious to see the responses. About 50% of you had voted. We'll take just a few more seconds. Please get your vote in. Okay. Great, so we're sharing the poll results here. It looks like the top response was change the way you, or the frequency with which you communicate. That makes sense. That's often the lightest and quickest thing you can do. 45% of you said that. The next highest here is launched a new product or service. That is very interesting to me. I'm very curious. I'd love to, if any of you want to share some of your new products or services, you can, just to give us some detail. You can type it in the questions just to share that with us, and we can kind of announce it anonymously. What are some new creative things companies are doing? Love to learn about that. Created a new partnership with 28%. Changed your pricing, 24%. Oh, I scroll down and there are more options. I apologize. Okay, reformulated your strategic plan is 40%. Designed a new marketing strategy is 43%. Excellent. So this is fabulous. Thank you all very much. Really interesting. Okay, so we're going to dive right in here with some of the concrete insights and things that we have observed here within AMI. The very first thing is talking about e-commerce. We're now 4 to 6 weeks into quarantine. In San Francisco, where I live, they have extended quarantine until the end of May. In Florida, in Miami, where our AMI offices are based, Florida is opening up as of Monday, but Miami is still under lockdown. In Latin America, every country is different, but in most countries, we're seeing it extend at least until mid-May, if not to the end of May. So we still have a couple of weeks left of quarantine. So what have we seen so far? You can see growth rates here compared to the same time period as last year. So the month of April, we saw a massive jump in the purchase of essential goods over the e-commerce channel, digital goods also doing very well, but some real struggle in other areas of e-commerce. And, you know, in our research, I personally have seen a lot of reports out there of e-commerce exploding, e-commerce in a boom thanks to coronavirus, e-commerce skyrocketing, hitting record numbers. And these headlines are very exciting to read, but I want to caution us when we see news like this and encourage you to really look at what these articles and reports are reporting, because overall in 2020, consumption, overall household consumption will fall. People right now are not spending money because of the high levels of uncertainty. All of you in your companies are most likely facing budget cuts. That applies to households as well. People are not spending as much money. And so overall in 2020, we expect an 8% decrease in e-commerce expenditure. This is compared to an anticipated 19% growth before COVID hit. So we're seeing a contraction overall. So I want to caution everyone when we see reports and data out there that is saying e-commerce is exploding. What is true, of course, is that certain areas of e-commerce are experiencing a massive boost, as we can see the numbers here. Essential goods, everything related to pharmacy, basic household items, and supermarket. This is the most immature and underdeveloped vertical in e-commerce. It's the newest. It also has very fierce competition from brick and mortar. And so this is naturally the vertical that will have the highest growth, and it's the vertical that is experiencing the biggest benefit right now. Digital goods, of course, is growing faster than we anticipated pre-COVID because of the increased engagement we see. Now, and just for everyone's information, what we call delivery apps and ride-hailing apps, you know, delivery like Rappi, all of that, even though they might be delivering food, restaurant food, or even retail, that falls into the digital goods category because it's within an app and you're buying on a marketplace. So that would fall into the digital goods category, growing at around 41%. Of course, though, when we look at overall retail, we see a decline in April, because people are being more cautious with their spending. Non-essential goods, luxury items, and more expensive items are declining even faster. And of course, travel is very, very tragically the most hard hit. So this is what we've seen in April. At the end of the year, we'll see these numbers normalize a little bit. Travel, we don't expect to fully recover until 2022. It will continue to struggle to recover, taking a longer time there. Now, what I do want to urge all of us to think about is not just these numbers, but what do these numbers point to? And so not only within essential goods, thinking about who are the new customers who are coming on board, who are getting exposed to e-commerce for the first time because they need to buy their groceries online, or e-commerce is the only channel that they have available to them to cover their basic needs right now. How can we make that experience valuable enough and convenient enough to make sure that they stay in the long run? We'll talk more about that on the next slide. What I also want to encourage everyone to think about is what new behaviors are emerging from coronavirus that we can potentially formalize and monetize later on. If you just observe your own life, what are you doing differently? And that could eventually turn into a business. This is what the most innovative companies do. They are watching human adaptation and seeing how can I provide value. So in the digital goods category, we are more engaged on the internet than ever before for entertainment and for socialization and for working. And a lot of these activities have not yet been formalized or monetized. Just to give a couple of examples, people are having birthday parties over Zoom. My parents now know how to use Zoom. I'm sure that's true for many of you on the call today. Family reunions, weddings, all over digital platforms. So how can companies offer goods and services to enhance that experience? What's funny is that all of these capabilities were available to us before this happened, but we're seeing people adapt to current circumstances using technology to their advantage. And so how can business, how can we develop this into new business opportunities? Something to think about and to look at this digital goods and this highly engaged consumer in the digital sense right now. How can we think about that in the long term of creating new business opportunities for us? So if we go to the next slide, again, thinking about our consumers and how do we help consumers become and remain digitized? This is one of the key questions everyone is asking. Of course, historically, we've had challenges with access to e-commerce by the unbanked, 200 million unbanked, 20% of e-commerce is paid for in cash in the region. And we have over 200 million people who do not shop online, even if they do have access to the banking system. Now, when we break down this customer segment of those who are unbanked, what's interesting to observe about them is that they represent 41% of the labor force and 38% of the top richest 60% of the population. So it's important to understand that unbanked does not necessarily mean poor. It does not necessarily mean disenfranchised or even marginalized or excluded. They have money, they have jobs, they move millions, if not billions of dollars. And so our job in the e-commerce industry is to make our channel and our products and our platforms convenient enough and user-friendly enough to entice this undigitizable demographic, specifically in this current moment. Lots of examples of ways companies are extending themselves to make themselves available, not only available, but attractive to this demographic. Free shipping is the no-brainer. We have some examples of department stores doing this, but many companies are offering free delivery specifically during this time. Offering free internet, access to your app or online store for free without consuming any data is another strategy. Boosting your call center to accommodate those who are not as familiar with technology. Again, enabling contactless delivery at this particular moment. Partnering with delivery companies. Chedraui, a grocery store in Mexico, reported recently that 40% of all of their online sales are through apps like Rappi and other delivery type apps. So that really provides an amazing boost to your e-commerce sales. So at this moment, when we're thinking about how do I leverage this moment or how do I deal with this moment, it's thinking about how can I access and provide value to a demographic that has not valued e-commerce in the past. Similarly, on the next slide, for merchants, thinking about how can we help merchants digitize? Almost more urgently than consumers, merchants need to digitize right now and want to digitize in order to participate. For many, e-commerce is the only option available. So 40 million merchants in the region who today don't accept any form of online payment. The smartest and the quickest companies to respond are those acquirers and payment facilitators and aggregators who are providing simple and almost instantaneous solutions so that merchants can get online. The pay link is probably the best example, providing a simple URL to your merchant that can paste that in social media, in a messaging app, in WhatsApp, over email. They don't have to have a website. They don't have to have any technological expertise, and they can sell their products online immediately. So, if we go to the next slide, we can see how some players in the market are already embracing this in their marketing. Cielo, a leading acquirer in Brazil, announced that in March, their Superlink solution, which had already been in existence, grew 200% in 1 week. Thanks to merchants wanting to get online immediately and sell immediately because it's their only option right now. So how can you sell without a machine, over social media, without a monthly fee, and without a setup cost? This is what small merchants are looking for right now. Another example, similarly on the next slide, is eBanks. eBanks has been traditionally a cross-border payment processing company, recently opening up local service in Brazil. You can see from this advertisement, they're created this product specifically for merchants dealing with coronavirus. Sell online without leaving your home. Fast, easy. You can start selling immediately while your store is closed. So you don't have to have an official business open. You can receive an advance of your funds. Again, more examples of payment processing companies coming to the rescue to merchants and providing something that they both value and that they can integrate almost immediately without having any technical expertise. Okay. So you may be, asking yourself or saying to yourself, that's great. All of these things that you're suggesting or examples that you're giving cost money. These are investments that need to be made in the consumer or in the merchant. It's true that in many ways, the payments industry and the banking industry are financing the survival of commerce in Latin America. Now, what I want to show here is, yes, while investing, lowering your fees for merchants or investing in free shipping or whatever you decide to do to promote e-commerce has a cost right now, which may be difficult to manage given the uncertainty. This slide presents a little bit of what the potential benefit could be. So the average e-commerce annual spend of the average consumer in Latin America is $686 a year. That's been the historical average. So if we think about just a 25% conversion of non-e-commerce users, if 25% of them turn into long-time e-commerce users, we'll experience a 39% growth in the total e-commerce market, and would equal to 42 billion incremental dollars. That's just 25% of people. If that moves up to 50%, we now have an $84 billion lift in e-commerce spend. 100% conversion, which of course is unlikely, but just to put into context what this total opportunity looks like, results in 150% growth of e-commerce in the region. And when you have that large of growth, now you have almost eliminated competitive threat, because you have a massive sandbox in which to play of so many different niches of consumers and demographics that for merchants and payment providers, you have almost unlimited opportunities to design products and to address new customers. So you have a lot more wiggle room and a lot less competition to worry about. So just want to provide some optimism there for anyone feeling stress about the investment needed to be made right now to move in this particular set of circumstances. Okay. If we go to the next slide. At this time, so that was kind of a discussion of e-commerce for both consumers and merchants, the private sector. Now, another very interesting part of this discussion is the role that governments are playing. So I'm going to invite Marina to tell us about what she has been observing in Brazil to pivot us at this point.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Hello, everyone again. So the idea here, as Lindsay just said, is to show how the government is using different forms and emphasizing digitization instead of really discuss about politics or the behind the scenes of the social programs, right? So to start, government announced this coronavoucher, which is a financial aid to support informal workers, part of the gig economies and self-employees that are suffering from because of the quarantine. So this will be paid in 3 installments of around $110 in April, May, and June. What is different about that? Caixa Econômica, which is a state-owned bank, are the paying agent. And in order to extend the benefit, applicants should download an app that Caixa developed specifically for this program and make the registration at this app or at the website. So there is no need to go to the branch, and that's the first time Caixa is using something like that for a social program. And what is happening also is in order to make the register, the applicants should inform an account because Caixa will disburse at this account. 40% of the applicants don't have an account, are part of this unbanked population that we have, and it's a huge population in Brazil. At the moment of the register, those unbanked can decide if they will open an account at any bank, or if not, Caixa will automatically open this virtual account, virtual deposit account. For now, almost 99% of the applicants let Caixa open this account. Caixa is expecting to open around 30 million accounts. It's a huge number of new accounts and new banked population, let's say. For that, the first topic that calls our attention is why any other traditional or new bank opted to go and capture this unbanked population, because we know that it's part of their advertising that they want to support the unbanked population. And what calls our attention here is why none of those banks made like a mass advertising at television or places in which this unbanked population could know about their brands, for example. And also, the second step that we can think about is that, are they really wanting to bank unbanked or only underserved population? That is totally different, right? So to give another specifics of this program, government and Caixa together are really trying to incentivize the use of these virtual accounts. So withdrawals are really restricted and they follow a specific calendar. In fact, they started this week while the disbursements started at the beginning of April. And Caixa Econômica also provided this account without any fee, and all the basic transactions are included, like bill payments, transfers, everything. And also they issued virtually debit cards to incentivize the use of this money online without the need for this population to go and get the withdrawals and the cash per se. What we saw is that the acquirers and the industry in Brazil, they quickly were able to accept these virtual debit cards. So for example, Adyen, Cielo, GetNet, together with Magazine Luiza, which is a huge and popular store here in Brazil, immediately they made the arrangements to be able to accept the debit cards at their e-commerces. But this week, when the withdrawals started, what we are seeing is the still huge lines at Caixa Econômica branches to get the money per se. So it's something that we need to keep campaigning and following to see how it goes. But anyhow, it is a big challenge for the cultural movement here at this unbanked population in Brazil. To give an idea of size, Caixa already disbursed 50 million, around 50 million to 50 million people, and this sums around $6.2 billion in disbursements up to now. Right? If you could go to the next slide, Abel, I would like to show a different example, because just after the coronavoucher, Sao Paulo state, the governor, together with PicPay, which is a fintech specialized in payment here in Brazil, they launched this Merenda voucher, which is like a support for students that really depends on the meal provided at school, as they are only meal during the day. So they are going to pay around $10 per student of the Sao Paulo state. And now we can see a partnership with PicPay, which is one of these new fintechs and innovative payment facilitators here in Brazil. It's a really established company here. And what they are doing is, people, just as for coronavoucher, they have to download PicPay app and make the registration to be able to receive the benefit. It's around 700,000 students that will take around 500,000 accounts, new accounts for PicPay. In only 5 hours, when they announced the programs, after 5 hours, PicPay had already registered 130,000 new accounts. So it's a huge opportunity to capture this population. And it's also for low income, totally unbanked population. And what we see is like PicPay is also incentivizing the use of digital channels. So it's a totally free account. They can use payments via QR code, and it's something that they are really trying to put in place here and to make people aware of this kind of payment. And also transfers as well as payment of bills. So this is the way PicPay is handling that, but they also let available the option to withdraw at any banco 24 hours here at the ATMs in Brazil. After this announcement, I just wanted to comment that Minas Gerais also announced a similar program, but now what we can see is a more inquisitive willing of PagSeguro, which is another fintech here of Brazil that has a digital branch called PagBank. They are the one doing the disbursements for Vale Merenda in Minas Gerais. And the difference is that PagSeguro is paying 20 reais in additional for new customers coming from this Vale Merenda. And more than that, they are issuing debit cards that will be delivered for each of these families receiving the Vale Merenda. So it shows more like an acquisition partnership with Minas Gerais state. And it seems that PagSeguro is really trying to capture and try to understand better this population, right? How they will handle, because they are also incentivizing the QR code use, paying 10% back as cashback for payments made by QR code. So they are giving both options. You can use the card that this population can be more used to for payments, and also they are providing incentive as this cashback to use the QR codes. So the idea is how will this change the market here? And first of all, are banks gonna go for this strategy? Are gonna see how PicPay and PagSeguro goes? Also, Caixa Econômica will be able or not to, after that, gain these clients that coming from coronavoucher and monetize that. So those are the kind of questions we are doing, and we are following the market here to understand. But the idea behind it is to show how the government, in partnership before with a state bank owned, and then fintechs go into that, and also paying to have this partnership with the government. So that was the idea I wanted to bring here. And I will give it back to Lindsay so she can provide the rest of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Marina. Really fascinating, some of the things we're seeing in Brazil, and we already have a question. What are similar things happening in other countries? And this slide specifically addresses that. So Brazil is absolutely ahead of the curve. We see an integration of government, state-owned banks, and fintech, which is really interesting at a large scale, and quite early on in this situation, this was already taking place. Now we see in other countries similar movements, but not quite at the same scale. So, and we have a key code here. The most advanced countries include Brazil, Uruguay, which the government launched two app, which is meant to distribute a food subsidy partnership between state-owned bank and a state-owned telecom, only available through the app, again, promoting digitization. Colombia also providing subsidies through traditional banks and also through digital wallet Mobi, and you must open an account to access this subsidy. Peru, you have a bit of a mixed situation. Subsidies being paid out via key leading banks, but also through a digital wallet, which is attempting to, again, bring unbanked people into this system. But in comparison to Brazil, we see these other examples are a little bit behind what we're seeing in Brazil. Chile and Argentina, we see subsidies being paid directly into existing bank accounts. Not quite the same as partnering with a fintech or a wallet to promote digitization. Now, this is changing on a daily basis, and some of these things are launched. We learned about the Peru and the partnership with Tunki just yesterday. So if this may change today or tomorrow, but as it stands right now, this is what we see. In Mexico, we have not yet seen, and anyone please correct me if we are wrong about this, but we have not seen any assistance announced to citizens yet. We've seen the government subsidy package for small businesses and debt relief, but not any payouts directly to citizens. So right there, Mexico, falls greatly behind its other peer markets in terms of using this as an opportunity to bring folks into digital financial services. So on the next slide, the last pillar we're talking about when we speak of digitization in Latin America is the need for digital onboarding. Someone also mentioned this in one of the questions. One major barrier to participating in digital financial services is not being able to get to a bank to open an account. And right now, what we're seeing the need for is perfectly smooth and instantaneous digital onboarding. In Q4 of last year, we did a study in which we observed 35 banks in the region, traditional and neobanks, and we found that just 33% of the traditional banks we looked at enabled instant online account opening with instant approval. You either had to go to a branch to finalize that process, or it took up to 72 hours to open your bank account. Compared to 91% of neobanks that had this capability. And more than ever, the deployment of a virtual card instantaneously is required to enable people to unlock spending possibilities. Just to show an example of this, TOC, the fintech, using electronic signature technology and biometrics to help financial institutions enable this capability, working with Super Digital, in several countries in the region, and a neobank, part of Santander. And they grew, they reported more than 100% growth in new account openings in March compared to February. So an immediate response from the market to engage with digital banks. And institutions that already had this capability are able to leverage that very much right now. Institutions that did not have this capability really need to be thinking seriously about enabling a perfectly smooth digital onboarding process. Okay. We go to the next slide. It's our final slide as we wrap up this conversation, and then we'll move to our panel discussion. But just to help us have a framework for how to think about how to move during this situation, depending on who I am in the ecosystem, what do I most need to be focused on? Merchants, it's about enabling access and value to your customers in the e-commerce channel, overcoming any barrier that remains for your customers to buy online and unlocking that potential, and creating an experience so that your customers want to stay in that digital channel. For payment service providers and acquirers serving merchants, it's how to deliver capabilities that are easy, seamless, instantaneous, and cheap and affordable at this present moment. Governments and banks focusing on education. You're serving an under-digitized population who maybe has never dealt with banks before. So how do we promote and educate customers about these digital solutions? And for banks and fintechs, awareness. Many neobanks, while you may have a wonderful online user experience, awareness is still very low among the majority of consumers. So banks and fintechs really promoting and growing awareness of your digital features and digital capabilities. Okay, so that kind of rounds out our conversation. We're going to do a final poll. Right now, if you could go to the next slide, we'll launch that poll. We have talked about lots of ways in which companies have already responded or should respond. And we would like to know, what are your biggest challenges to doing so? What is preventing you from implementing some of these changes that you would like to implement? What are you seeing standing in your way? If you take a moment to respond to the poll, we'll read out the results and we'll have a nice juxtaposition of what you have done and what are some of the barriers still impeding progress. Okay, so got about 50%. We'll take about 15 more seconds to get your vote in. Okay, we're almost there. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so we see, what is your greatest challenge? Not surprisingly, 50% of you said the environment is still too uncertain. Very understandable. It's very difficult to predict what will happen and how we can make concrete decisions. Number two also would be not understandable lack of budget. Interesting is also with 15% is a non-agile working structure. So internally, it can be difficult to push through the decisions you need to push through. That's also very interesting. Okay, thank you everyone for your participation. At this time, I'm going to ask Mónica to join us.
Hi again.
Hello. Wonderful. Well, let's, if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of anchor our discussion, Mónica, in, again, these 4 pillars that we talked about. And Rappi is an interesting example because it touches all of these areas, working with consumers, working with merchants, and having a very high profile brand right now. So again, I want to remind everyone to please submit your questions for myself, Marina, or Mónica through the Q&A, and we'll address those at the end of this panel. Okay. So Mónica, again, if you could just tell us again what your role at Rappi is, what you oversee. And I want to start off the conversation talking about this first pillar, consumers. So tell us, pre-COVID, who was your typical consumer? What profile did they have? Let's start off there.
Okay, great. So I'm the global head of payments. We call it user payments in Rappi. It's everything that's related to the users, how we charge the users, different type of payment methods. Also, we keep ongoing conversations with the issuing banks, acquirers, and payments processors. This is the whole focus of my role right now. Mm-hmm. As for Rappi, I guess that the pre-COVID user that we were seeing in the app is just people that they feel in Rappi a way to get everything that they might need for their day-to-day or different type of activities, and not spending time going to actually buy it. So they're gonna have everything inside the app, and someone that is going to be buying for them and then deliver it in their homes. So I guess my favorite type of user in Rappi are the working parents, because they want to spend time at their homes with their kids or even with their families, and they don't have to go out for buying groceries or even the pharmacy, something at the pharmacy that they might need. If they need something in the middle of the night, because the kid is not feeling well, they can buy it in Rappi and they are gonna get it at their homes. And even they can buy everything for the homework of the kids within Rappi. So mm-hmm. They can just deliver it at their homes and spend this time in a more useful way.
Mm. You're talking about during COVID-19, everyone is stuck at home together and you want parents to be able to enjoy time with their kids instead of having to go out shopping and.
even previous COVID-19, I think this is the philosophy that we're offering. Just don't go out or spend the time that you might be using shopping, spend it wisely and at their homes or whatever they want to do instead of buying the things.
Okay, so kind of changing the mentality around shopping. You don't need to go out shopping. We can come to you.
Yes, and we can do it for you.
And so now with in the situation that we're in, have you seen new customer groups come onto the Rappi platform? And are you guys doing anything in particular to facilitate access from different groups?
So actually, we have seen all types of groups, of different types of groups approaching to Rappi, creating new users to get all the things for the day-to-day activities. We have been particularly focusing on people over 65 because this is the riskier population for the COVID. And we're offering them free Rappi Prime if they give a valid ID in the app. This is going to go through a process where we validate that the person is actually over 65. We give it the Rappi Prime for free, and also we opened a landline where they can call if they have any trouble with the app, they don't know how to use it, or if they don't even know how to create an order. So a person is going to be on the phone helping them, or just creating the order for them so they can see it on the app.
Okay, so you have a call center actually helping people navigate the app.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we feel that sometimes it's not that easy, especially for this group of people. So it was just easier for them to call and have some help creating their orders.
And have you seen adoption? Have you seen older people using this service?
We have seen it, I guess, especially because our type of group before was not only young people, but people got used to the application, and now they're telling their parents, don't go out, you can use Rappi. So it's switching away. So these people are promoting the people over 65 to buy in Rappi. So we are also, like, with this and the extra service that we're offering, we have seen that people are actually trying to understand or getting to use Rappi.
Okay, excellent. And what about underbanked populations or unbanked people?
So we have partnered with some banks. We have seen that some banks in Latin America are offering an easier way to create an account. They don't have to go, but Marina was telling before for Brazil, there are some initiatives here in Colombia where you don't have to go to a physical bank to create an account. So we are also creating partnerships with them. So these people can understand how to use their accounts in Rappi, like making cash-ins to Rappi Pay and then create an order, or just adding their cards here.
Okay. And I'm going to jump all over the list of questions I have for you here, just because we're talking about the unbanked and banks. You know, you guys have the product Rappi Pay also to help folks who maybe not have their own card. And can you talk about Rappi Pay and how people are loading that wallet, you know, cash versus bank transfer, and the behavior you've noticed there?
So we have Rappi Pay, which is Rappi's wallet. You can, in countries like Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil, you can get a debit card. This debit card can be used in any e-commerce or any physical commerce. But the way you use it is you make cash in this app, mainly from bank transfers in Mexico and Colombia, and you can do it also with a credit card. For people that don't have a credit card, it has been really useful to make these cash-ins via bank transfer. And they have been using it to create orders in Rappi. So before we were seeing that the first order of a user was mainly made in cash. Now we are seeing that they first make the bank transfer and then use it in Rappi to create their first orders.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So before, you saw new users would load their wallet in cash, and now you've seen a change to that, the number one being bank transfer?
No, before we were seeing that people were actually creating orders in cash, like to pay the Rappi tender in cash. But now they're switching, and now they're making cash-ins in the app, so they can create orders in Rappi.
Okay, got it. So, and do you think that's because people are afraid of using cash? They don't want to have that contact? Or is it because now you're attracting a different demographic of people who are banked, and whereas before it was unbanked people? Or what is your hypothesis?
I will say it's both of them, mainly because people don't want to have any contact on their deliveries. They don't want to give the money to the couriers or the Rappi tenderos and to get their products. They prefer not to have any contact and just the products delivered at their door, and they just grab them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fascinating. And you mentioned there's also the Rappi debit card, right? And so have you noticed an increase in usage or any change in behavior of what types of products people are buying with that?
So before we were seeing that people was using the card mainly for shopping or to buy travel tickets or to book any hotels, also for mobility like Cabify, Uber. Now that these things are not used or they're blocked mainly, people are using it more for Netflix or Spotify, and also for online gaming. Most of the things that you use when you're at your home and you want to spend the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. So, just following this trend of increased online engagement.
Yes.
Okay. And, thinking about merchants, because you guys interface with merchants as well, can you talk about what changes you've seen on the merchant side? Have you seen an increase in demand for merchants selling on Rappi? Have you seen any new verticals come into play?
So you can find pretty much anything in the app. We have from restaurants, pharmacies, supermarkets. We even have a vertical that is called e-commerce, which is what we want to call the most similar to having a mall inside an app. So you can find almost anything here, and different type of products, even perfumes or makeup or things for the home. Even like if you want to buy a chair, you can find it on Rappi. So along with this, we have seen an increase in all type of merchants that want to be selling in Rappi. And like try to become or to open a different channel to sell their products now that they have to close all the stores. Also, we have seen that the top restaurants in each of the cities want to become Rappi partners. Before this, they prefer to sell their experiences in the restaurant because it will be kind of different to offer it through an app. But now they're offering their services with closed doors. They just have the kitchen open, and they're gonna sell it through Rappi.
Okay, so more high-end restaurants.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you think of the typical restaurant on an app more of a local kind of convenience fast type of restaurant, but you're seeing more high-end
restaurants
options. Yeah. Okay.
Offering their products.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk to us a little bit about the cocinas ocultas and what that is and how that's being impacted?
Cocinas ocultas, or dark kitchens in English, it's something that we have been promoting with most of the restaurants. It's basically having a space only for kitchens where they are going to prepare all the meals, and the Rappi tender is going to pick them up from these dark kitchens. So it's not the space of the restaurant per se, because we don't want to have both type of orders in the restaurant. It can be too many orders in the same kitchen. So we offer these spaces where they're gonna prepare their products. It's going to be the person from the restaurant, and then we don't get or we don't mix the orders for the restaurant that they're going to deliver inside the restaurant with the ones that they're going to be delivered via Rappi. So we, with this COVID, all the dark kitchens have been promoting more, and we're giving or offering more spaces for different restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Expanded capacity, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to open everything up to audience questions in a moment because we do have lots of questions. But I want to ask you, Monica, first of all, one of the questions in the poll, one of the top reasons that people have a challenge responding is a non-agile working situation within their company. So I want to ask you, what is special about Rappi internally that has enabled you to be so innovative in general and react so quickly to this situation? And if there are any tips or, what is special about how you guys work that has enabled you to shift and change so quickly?
So I guess before the COVID, we were used to work away from other people. It's usually in Rappi to work from home, or we have 9 countries and we have people working from those 9 countries, so you have to be in contact with them all the time. So I guess the good thing is that we were used to this kind of situation, and now that we have to work from home, we're having more meetings, of course, because you have to keep communicating with everybody inside Rappi. But we also use Slack as the main channel communication to keep with the effort of communication. This has been easy but tricky in a way, because you have the other employees at their homes dealing with their families or with the kids with the things that you have to do at your home. So in a way, it's easy, but you also have to be dealing with their families at the other side of the phone call. Yes, you can hear the kids and like these kind of things. So
constant communication has been a key for
the
you
main
guys.
key, yes.
Okay.
And I guess everybody is super focused on this time that we have to deliver the best user experience since we are growing faster. So this has been in our minds to keep all this communication and to keep all this improvement in our app.
Okay. And then, the last question I'll ask you before we open it up is kind of 2 questions. Do you guys have a vision or a strategy for how to keep these new customers in Rappi long term? Digitize them for the long term? And what new habits or new behaviors do you think will be permanent after quarantine is over?
So I guess we're trying to listen to what the users are seeing all the time. We have different types of focus groups, questions that we send to our users to understand why they didn't make an order, or why they didn't pursue on finding the products. And this type of communication also with the customer is giving us some feedback to change the user experience in our app. We are trying to improve all the time and to give the best experience. And I guess this is what is going to make us different. Also getting new merchants in the different countries where you can find anything that you will need for your day-to-day activities.
Okay. And anything you expect to change permanently in the long term?
To change from Rappi?
Yeah, well, your customers, your merchants.
I guess in the merchant side, we are going to have more merchants in our app. You're going to be able to find different type of things that you would like to buy. So I guess this is going to be good for the customers. And even in the customer side, they're going to get used or they're going to experience buying on an e-commerce during this period. And they're going to get used to see how easy it is to find things or to get all the things that you might need delivered at your door. So I guess the combination of both things is gonna keep us growing in the way that we're doing.
And you just made me think of a question. How do merchants typically manage the relationship with Rappi and their own e-commerce platform? right? You have big supermarkets and big brands selling on Rappi. They have their own e-commerce store. You know, is that competition? Is that a complement? And, you know, up and coming merchants who maybe use Rappi as a first stepping stone and then open their own store. How have you seen that relationship play out?
No, I guess it's sort of like a competition in a way because they have their own stores and they have Rappi also, but it depends on the type of customer as well. So you open your own e-commerce expecting to have different customers because it might be easy for them to get the products, and you get the app. Most of our sales are made through the app, which is kind of trigger sometimes to get your order or to make your purchase. So we're trying to understand how to make things easier for our users and for them to create their orders, and in the same way trying to see what we can perform better. So I guess at the beginning it's kind of a competition, but I guess it depends on the type of customers and in the type of sales that you're going to make.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I have 1,000 more questions, but so does our audience. So I want to make sure we address those. I'll ask Marina to come back on and Abel to start to field some of those audience questions. So feel free to, you know, continue to ask. We will go, you know, for another 30 minutes. We're scheduled for 90 minutes, or as, you know, as long as we have questions from the audience. So.
All right. Actually, there was a couple of questions that came through about Rappi, that since we were just speaking with Mónica, I thought it might be interesting. People wanted to know whether Rappi works for users outside of Latin America, like if someone in the United States can use Rappi to be able to send items or purchase items for a relative or somebody there. And there may also be an opportunity from a business standpoint with so many U.S. Hispanics here that have family over there. So they're asking if that's possible or not.
That's an amazing question. We have seen that people keep downloading the app just to send things to their families here. Like if they want to send a gift because it's a birthday party, or if they want to send also the supermarket food, the groceries, they can do it with Rappi. So It's an excellent question. They can use it from even countries outside where we are operating, and just they have to tap the address from where they want to deliver the things, and they just can navigate in the app.
So Mónica, what use cases are most you said gifts. Have you seen emergency relief like groceries or sending money?
Most of the things that we're seeing are actually gifts. You can use it for anything, for groceries and for even sending money or Rappi Cash. You can also send make P2P transfers via RappiPay from your user to another user, and they can use it inside the app or even with a debit card.
Okay.
For other e-commerces.
Great.
There's also an interesting question here from Marina with regard to Brazil. So Ignacio is asking about whether the coronavoucher that was mentioned, if it's going to be paid by fintech institutions. He mentions that there's a law for that got the support of half of Congress. So he's trying to figure out who's going to actually, if those fintech institutions are going to pay for the coronavoucher, or if it's going to be paid by non-bank financial institutions. So Marina, if you could take that one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Abel and Ignacio. So the exclusive paying agent for coronavoucher is Caixa Econômica. What can be done is that the beneficiaries can choose where they want to be paid. So they can open an account in a fintech or in another neobank instead of Caixa or any traditional bank, and Caixa will disburse the funds at this account. But the paying agent for coronavoucher is only Caixa Econômica, the state bank.
Okay, and there's another interesting question about that. So obviously people are taking advantage of this throughout the coronavirus crisis, but is there any sort of strategy in place to help people keep using these apps afterwards? Will there be a drive for people to keep on using those apps? That's also from Marina in Brazil.
Okay, that's actually a good question. We've been discussing that a lot. The point is banks, and now they are trying to educate the population, specifically the unbanked population, on how to use a bank account, a digital account, right? So they're trying to educate related to QR codes, how to make transfers, paying bills electronically, because this unbanked population, they are really used to pay and to deal only with cash. So the first aspect of it that they're trying to do and incentivize is how to educate these people. And the second approach that we saw, specifically when PagBank and PicPay also established these partnerships with the government of Minas and Sao Paulo, is they are adding additional features to the basic. So for example, Caixa Econômica first launched the digital account only allowing transfers and payments. And after they launched the digital debit card to incentivize the use of this digital account. And also PicPay as PagBank, they now are giving, for example, 10% cash back for use of QR codes. They are also delivering, PagBank in this case, are also delivering a physical debit card for the beneficiaries. So maybe what we understand is they are trying to understand this new group of clients they are getting with this programs, and see how they will behave, and see what will be the most attractive products for them. Try to get a strategy to tackle and this population, right? They're trying to increase features and see which of those will be accepted or not, to see how to then get any fidelization of these clients.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. We also have a broader question here from Pete. So this maybe Lindsay may be able to help us with this one. His question is, with the increase in banking, you're projecting an increase in credit and debit payments as a preferred payment method in Latin America.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Definitely. Yes. We project debit actually to have the fastest growth because, first of all, debit has been restricted in e-commerce historically, and banks are more and more opening up debit cards to be used. So that will have, it's growing from a smaller base and will grow faster. And credit and debit overall will grow because cash payments, cash vouchers, and cash on delivery are really declining in availability and people's desire. So as Monica mentioned, a lot of folks were in Rappi making their first order using cash. Now that has moved to a bank transfer. So we'll definitely see an increase of all digital payments, specifically credit and debit, a decline in the use of cash, and more longer term, likely next year, an increase in the use of ACH and immediate real-time payment. Once central banks, across the region, there are multiple initiatives to enable real-time bank account payments via QR code or via any type of app. So that will really start to gain traction next year.
Okay. Hopefully I'm not butchering the pronunciation on this. Yuan has a question also, and the question is, how much will COVID boost the adoption of digital services in Latin America by the lower middle class in the region? So far, the majority of the digital service adoption that we're seeing in Latin America, such as Rappi, Uber, Netflix, and even some fintech services, are within the middle to higher class. So Yuan is asking if it's going to boost adoption by the lower middle class.
Yes, I would say I can answer, and then Monica, I'd love to hear your thoughts. The thinking is yes, definitely. Right now, e-commerce is very much directed and used by, as you say, card holders and the kind of upper middle class, and it has become a bit saturated. And so growth, even prior to COVID, growth is really going to come from the lower groups. That is even more so the case now because e-commerce is the only way you can transact for a lot of products. We saw some recent survey data that came out in Brazil that said the two fastest groups of e-commerce growth were in SES economic brackets C and D, and folks over the age of 60. So we definitely see this growing, bringing new users into e-commerce and seeing growth in these new user groups. The question is, will they stay, or will they revert back to old patterns? What do you think, Monica?
Yeah, I believe the same. And I think also with the help of all the fintechs that we have been launching in different countries in Latin America, that is going to help a lot to give less friction to create a bank account or even to get a credit card. in order to buy in e-commerces, mainly for the own banking people right now.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, thank you. We have another question here from Jaime, and that is one of the big concerns in Latin America with e-commerce by consumers is information security and fraud. So he's asking what actions have we seen by companies to facilitate and remove this barrier or deal with the challenge of fraud?
So generally, I can speak generally. It's absolutely a top priority and a top concern. We've seen banks. We've seen increased bank partnerships with fintechs to improve their fraud controls, be more specific, and protect consumers. And also, maybe even the bigger question is when banks decline good transactions. Because that creates additional friction and a frustrating experience for someone who actually wants to make a legitimate purchase. So that is as important as dealing with fraud, because if you're discouraging good consumers from making purchases, you'll only have your fraudsters left over. So managing both sides of that is very important. So we've seen new fintech companies coming in with very advanced machine learning and data analytics to address that. And I was going to say something else that just went out of my head, but communicating a message of, this is what I was going to say. Fraud will always be a top concern of consumers, but less so as time goes on, because you have a younger demographic coming up into e-commerce who has been using smartphones and technology since they were very young. And so trust is not at the forefront of their minds like it is for their parents. You can observe that in the US and in Latin America. So using trust and fraud security in your marketing becomes less important because it's a value that it's not as valued by the younger generations. However, it is as important materially, because as soon as you have a security breach, now these people who did not say that they valued security very much value it. So you have to remain secure while at the same time not necessarily incorporate it into your messaging as much when you're talking about the younger consumer groups. But Monica, I'd like you to comment on, what you're doing at Rappi about fraud. If you've any trends you've seen, anything you can comment there.
We're keeping in the case of you're seeing more transactions, of course you might perceive more fraud. So pretty much it's the same as you were saying. We have a huge team of fraud prevention with machine learning tools, with a team of data analysts, also a 24/7 team that is seeing what is going on with the different type of orders, if they might have some fraud scheme or something like that, so we can prevent from having credit card fraud. Also, what you were mentioning at the beginning, we are working really close with the banks, with especially the biggest banks in each of the countries where we are, seeing or trying to get their feedback on what they're seeing in fraud trends, and also to increase communication with them to see how we can improve our acceptance rate to have the less rejections from the banks, so our customers can keep with their orders with credit cards, and also to improve our machine learning or our tools for fraud prevention.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
All right. To step back for a moment to the discussion that Marina had about Caixa, Hilmer was asking, how is identity verified when people open an account with Caixa? And so it's a detail, but it may be helpful for people to understand.
Okay, sure. People, they have to send the CPF, which is the register number of Brazil. And based on that, Caixa, together with DataPrev, which is an entity checking database for the government, they will see if this is a valid person or not. They are doing really few checkings, in fact, in order not to jeopardize the timing of payment, but CPF is the key the key for this verification, the ID verification.
Okay. We also have a broader question here from Jimena. Is there a potential for cross-border e-commerce in the region? Are barriers to trade in goods, for example, the differences in minimis, the reverse logistics for international return, or barriers to trade in services? Are these the most challenging things across countries?
Yeah, great question.
It's complex.
Yeah, I mean, is there potential for e-commerce? Absolutely, cross-border e-commerce. Frankly, is there potential? Yes. Are moves being made to enable it? I would say no. Cross-border e-commerce is still very much concentrated between the US, Europe, and China. And this will stay the same. Latin America tends to produce similar products, and so having cross-border trade within the region is limited, and consumers look for products in the North American market and the Chinese market, where they have vast variety of things that are not available locally. So my opinion is, now, if I ask my logistics colleague, head of logistics, to come in and talk about some of the challenges with logistics, he may have a different opinion, because there is a lot of work being done to integrate the region from a logistics standpoint. And on the trade side, you know, using e-commerce for B2B trade and commerce is a different question. When we're thinking about consumer goods, I don't see that happening as much. Now, we have some regional companies like Rappi and others who are present all over the region, and for whom cross-border may be something in their roadmap and something they may be seeing demand that I'm not seeing. Monica, do you have an opinion on that?
Actually, I don't know that much about what is going on cross-border merchants. I was actually going to ask you what is happening with Amazon trying to get into Latin America, or if you know something about it.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is a great example. Amazon has, you know, opens their local marketplace in Mexico. They've been in Brazil for several years now, and are imagining and considering how to open up the region more widely. What we know about their activity in Mexico is they have their local marketplace in Mexico, and people buy on that local marketplace, but people still buy a lot from Amazon US because of the availability of products. It's much wider than it is in Mexico. So again, the people go to an international merchant for two reasons: for price and for variety. And so as long as that demand, the variety and pricing is still greater in North America and China, I see that's where the majority of demand will be going.
Okay. We have a more general question here that has to do with mobile wallets. And the question is interoperability between mobile wallets, also connecting to conventional banks, of increasing or decreasing interest to governments and central banks?
I would say increasing, definitely. Interoperability in general is of increasing interest to banks and to governments, I'm sorry, because it removes friction and opens up the environment. We have in Brazil, the Brazilian Central Bank implementing a real-time payment infrastructure in which any financial institution or fintech can connect to and now be interoperable among those institutions to enable real-time payment flows. We have several countries, including Colombia and Argentina and Brazil, enabling or pushing a standardized QR code that would enable multiple wallets to talk to each other and exchange Peru as well, exchange money between, and of course Mexico with CODI. So the answer is yes, it is of interest. Now implementing that and getting the private sector to sign on to that is the challenge, because it removes a little bit your competitive advantage if you are the leader. If you're the leading wallet, if you're the leading fintech, you don't necessarily want to become interoperable. But this happened with card networks 10 plus years ago. And now we have in almost every country fully interoperable card acquiring. We're on that same path for QR code and wallet payments. We're still we're at the very beginning stages, but market and regulatory pressures will push us in that direction.
Okay. This one, I think you've touched on a little bit, but it's also kind of interesting to address in a general sense. This is from Chris, and Chris is asking, do you think we are one generation away from e-commerce being the preferred method of purchasing in the region?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe, Monica can probably speak to the different generations that you see in Rappi. I would say for certain segment of the population, yes, folks who, the upper middle class, people who have credit cards, major e-commerce spenders are people in their 30s who have money, who are going to spend on technology and international trips. And those are the big spenders. Now their kids, right, who started using their smartphones as teenagers, I would say, yes, that's true for that demographic. Now for lower middle class and working class, I would say we're still a few generations from that because the parents have not yet adopted e-commerce to that level. So like, once again, you have two Latin Americas, as we like to say. What are your thoughts, Monica?
I will say yes. Even like, as you were saying, kids in different families of different income levels are used to see technology, are used to see a phone, credit cards, how to buy, how the parents are making purchases right now, and how they're getting even the groceries, restaurants. It's different for this type of people. But I wouldn't say that we are that far in low-income families, because they're becoming more, not only more digitalized, but also they're creating, or they're in a mindset that they have to create their own bank account. They have to have their funds in a way. Also, governments are trying to create this sense of you have to save money for your future. And I guess the mentality is kind of different. It's not the same as in high-level income families, but I wouldn't say that we are that far from them to become or to adopt the e-commerce that far from what we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be interesting to see, in 6 months from now, these Brazilian initiatives with PicPay and PagSeguro, what the behavior is like among those groups. That might be the answer to our question.
Yes, that may be correct. We're going to see how these users are going to keep connected to Rappi.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's also a specific question. I don't know if this is something that it's within the purview of Monica to answer. It's from Kathy, and she's asking, what is the largest challenge for Rappi in terms of onboarding small merchants?
I guess that where we are seeing a kind of a problem or a delay in onboarding these small merchants, it's mostly because the full process of onboarding is not easy, since we have to make a KYC for the restaurant, for the owners of the restaurant. We have to sign contracts, and we have to agree in different things. For instance, the fees, how we pay them, how often we pay them. So these kind of things sometimes it's kind of hard to put it in a small or in a short term. But for Rappi, we have been working really hard. The accounts, for all the accounts, have been super conscious that they have to give all the information to the small restaurants or the small merchants in advance, so we can keep or to shorten the way, or to shorten the onboarding process.
Monica, have you seen, we've seen a whole lot of fintechs enabling digital onboarding for banks, right? For consumers. And I wonder, if you have seen any fintechs or any innovation that enable something similar for merchants that help automate that process or digitize that process.
I haven't seen it. We use, like for Rappi, we use a company to make all this KYC and to check to make all the background checks for the restaurants online. They don't have to go and deliver documents or to sign anything. There are these type of companies that are helping us or helping all the merchants to create this or to improve this process in a way.
Okay.
Another question comes from Juan, and I'm not sure if this ground was already covered or alluded to earlier, but in response to what Marina was describing in terms of the Brazilian government's efforts, Juan is asking if there are any other countries in Latin America doing similar schemes like this where government cash subsidy is distributed through fintechs.
Yes, we did see, on one of the previous slides, we mentioned several examples, and you'll receive those slides with some of those examples. Again, Brazil is the most advanced. What we've seen similar partnerships in Colombia, in Peru, in Uruguay. Brazil is they've partnered with massive, PagSeguro is, probably one of the biggest fintechs in the whole region. And they were the first to do it as well, first to start dispersing money. So Brazil is ahead of the curve, but we have seen examples in other markets.
Okay, this is another sort of a broader kind of a question as well. This one is from Mónica. And one of the attendees is asking, what are some of the main challenges to Rappi's expansion?
I guess I can talk from the payments point of view and then give you a general broad of the challenges. So from the payments point of view, we're going to expand in Latin America, and this is our main goal, to be in all the countries in Latin America in some years, or hopefully in 2 years. But I guess the most challenging part for payments is each of the countries are super different. So each of the countries have their own rules, and you have to adapt and investigate before going there. It's not like probably Europe, where the countries are quite similar in the way you make payments or the way the acquirers and the central bank rules work. But here in Latin America, it's really different, and you have to be prepared to understand how to make payments. There are some countries that, like Brazil and Mexico, which is easier because they're more advanced in a way in the financial ecosystem, or countries that are way smaller and where the e-commerce hadn't developed that much, but it's really hard to understand or to get into the payments ecosystem in a way. In the challenge expansion, I guess it will be first the competition, other delivery apps that are working or currently working in the different countries, to get all the Rapitenderos and to make this launch having enough Rapitenderos to offer the supply that you need to, and then sign contracts and make easier for the merchants to be on our app and to sell their products here.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I think we're getting a little bit short on time. I just wanted to turn over the floor to Lindsay real quick, just to have a couple little reminder messages as we wrap up here today, because I think we're going about a half hour earlier, so I think we're going to be a little short on time, and let's just wrap up here. So Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Okay, great, everyone. Thank you for your questions. There were a few we did not get to, so feel free to reach out over email. We can continue to have a discussion offline, but we do want to respect everyone's time. Just another reminder, if any of this, if you want a more in-depth look at any of these topics, I may recommend a targeted phone consultation with us, where we can really go in depth into your question and give you some more targeted information. If you liked any of the e-commerce data, we have a comprehensive e-commerce report available that details all of our projections for top 11 markets in the region. Again, webinars and then tailored monitoring and strategic planning sessions, all things that we can do to help you navigate right now. So please scan the QR code for more information. Again, on the next slide, another fun offering that we've been doing that's free and available to everyone is if you want to talk more in depth again in a group setting, every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, AMI hosts a coffee chat on payments in the region. Marina and I and Sophia on my team as well host a conversation where we can informally share experiences, share learnings. So if you want to be more interactive with us, if you want to talk with us, ask questions, share your own experiences, this is available. We have one coming up on Monday. So I'll give you a moment to, again, scan that QR code and register. This will take place every Monday while we're in quarantine, you know, trying to take the place of meeting together for happy hours and events and panels, and just have a time to to share, excuse me, share learnings in the region. Okay, and then finally, on our last slide, please feel free to reach out to all of us. We are available to continue the conversation, ask and answer more questions. A few of you we did not get to, unfortunately, so please reach out. And I want to finally take our last moment to sincerely thank Monica for joining us. Really enjoyed hearing your comments. Loved having you on here. We had a lot of interest from the panel. Any last thoughts or words you'd like to share?
Thank you so much for the invitation. If you want to have more information, or if you want to learn more about Rappi or either the payments investigations that we have going through all the Latin American countries, you can just contact me on LinkedIn, or here is my Rappi email. Okay.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Abel. Thank you for everyone for joining us. Again, this will be, the recording and slides will be sent out to you in the next day or two, so please keep your eyes open for that. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.